Our bank faced crisis in the heat of significant changes.
Challenging is a good word in a good sense.
Sense of your information flowing. We was able to prevent financial instability.
They've got bigger problems than Privat Bank. That's good news.
How do you like the diversity? Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And first of all, let me thank the organizers, the UCGA, for bringing all of us together and giving us an opportunity to share our experience. I'm honored to present the ladies joining me for today's discussion. Kateryna Rozhkova, who is the Deputy Governor of the National Bank of Ukraine and who has always been a great supporter of the corporate governance reform of the bank and has contributed a lot to adopting the law and making it happen and implementing the provisions. Sharon Easky, the chairperson of Privat Bank, and Baiba Apine, the chairperson of Oschadbank, and myself, Olyana, I'm the chair of UkrEximBank. So the three state-owned banks, their chairs, and Kateryna, we will be discussing today how the boards, the supervisory boards, felt themselves during the crisis, during the quarantine. What has changed, what has not changed, what we think needs to be changed. How do we think we were helpful during this time and will continue to be helpful? And we'll try to have the discussion very practical. And I ask my colleagues to please give specific examples war stories or good stories so that people understand practically what does it mean to have the board, for the board to function, for the board to bring the value. So the first, I think, area I suggest we focus today is the cooperation between the board, the supervisory board, and the management board. The question to everyone: do you think it changed during, because of the crisis or during the crisis, or there were no changes in addition to obviously technical changes and the online format? Baiba, can I ask you to go first, please?
Yes, sure. So our bank faced crisis in the heat of significant changes. We started the reorganization of our risk management. We are changing business directions, management rotation, and also digital transformation. Mm-hmm. For some tasks, crisis even facilitated faster movement forward. For instance, it's digitalization, more easier. It goes with the clients, and it's more difficult when it comes to internal processes of the bank, but it's still ongoing, and the crisis definitely facilitated this digital transformation. Another thing that went faster was streamlining of branch office network. It also was facilitated by the crisis. However, some tasks, what we already started, faced additional complexity due to uncertainty and limitations put on us, for instance, management rotation. I see the supervisory board task is to think long-term, and we should keep this point of view also during the crisis. So the crisis will end. What's next? The management board is running through crisis, and our task is to keep the strategic direction. Even now, it's quite difficult. What was done, particularly because of crisis in relation to the management board, we changed the budgeting cycle. We came from annual to quarterly with the focus on cost savings. And we were discussing a lot, what is the worst case scenario? How will adopt the bank in the case it will come true? So these are our major priorities in communicating with management boards.
Thank you, Baiba. I think I would echo the sort of a budget and cycle comment. We did the same, although we never discuss it, at our regular calls. But I think that was prompting, the situation was prompting the sort of short cycle. Sharon, anything you want to add on how the communication between the two boards changed, if changed, during these times?
Well, we have the luxury at Privat Bank of having now being 1 year into the new board's tenure. And our management board, with one exception, has been there almost 2 years or more. So there is already some very established and well-established communication processes and corporate governance process. So we started, in 17, and we have the benefit of that. The crisis actually increased the level of work of the supervisory board. I think it was true for probably financial institutions across the globe that were forced to identify ways to keep the financial systems going and deal with the challenges of COVID-19. So, at first, our communication with the management board was very focused on, in addition to our regular work, specifically focused on what the management board was doing in response to COVID-19 with regard to financial system. Privat Bank plays, as we know, a substantial role in keeping the cash flowing across the country, keeping ATMs full, providing services to pensioners, and this is true of the other state-owned banks as well. And so we were very much focused on a triage for the COVID response. And, making sure that our employees were safe, making sure that our customers were safe, making sure that essential operations continued. And we covered a lot of ground. In that case, our management board worked extremely well. They worked around the clock for probably 2 months, making sure that changes were implemented, that shifts were established so employees could rotate. And I'll give you an example of what they did, we completely supported, is working with the central bank. They, wanted to ensure that the cash distribution across the country continued. They were then afraid that drivers, the deliverers of the cash, would get exposed to COVID. So they put them on alternative 2-week schedules so that they could do the deliveries, get quarantined, and then be ready to go again, assuming they hadn't got infected. So that's just one tiny example of the things that we were discussing that help support the financial sector. There was this trade-off between closing branches to protect staff and providing services, again, to senior people or others that aren't used to using digital services and don't want to do digital services. Another thing that our bank did, we've supported at the supervisory board level, that seemed a specific implementation of the digital services was reach out to every client. They actually called, and as the pensioners and others came into the bank, I made a specific effort to encourage them to learn about the digital options and the stay-at-home options for conducting their business. We spent time training them. We again did outreach, and we did see they actually started tracking the movement of customers that had previously not used digital services, largely Privat 24, that then did move to it, and it was tens of thousands. So quite a successful move, specifically to digital services by people that we care a lot about, people that otherwise have to rely on the bank staff to help take care of financial services. The other thing that, again, not to spend too much time on this, we were very concerned, and we will have another round of questions, Olyana, probably about this specific issue, is the credit holiday discussions and what types of adjustments to make to customers, how that impacted the bank's financial situation, how we were being consistent with the decisions of the central bank and the government. So
yeah, I was planning to go into, discussion of any changes with the, the customers and the clients at a later stage. But it's good that Sharon already highlighted the sort of the topic, because I definitely wanted to go into that. But just to finalize the discussion of cooperation or communication between the board and the management. In our bank, we were definitely in a different starting position than Sharon, what Sharon described, because at the time of when the crisis started, we have been in the process of complete reload of the management team, and obviously the entire communication and cooperation between the two boards was built or is still building during interesting times, unusual times. Of course, it involves a lot of streamlining and a lot of technical questions, but in general, with our management board, I think by now we've established quite clear communication channels. We try to stick to them as much as possible. The chairs of both boards act as bottlenecks to make sure that no communication is missed. And we are having regular meetings with the management. Maybe we will make them less often after the crisis is over, but for the induction period for the new management, and also during crisis, we felt that we need to meet more often than potentially we would meet in the future. And we also try to be very careful having the new management and obviously wanting to still develop and strengthen the trust between the two governing bodies. We try to be careful not to distract the management from their operations, and to ask them enough questions for them to be challenged enough. And I do think that challenging is a good word in a good sense, not in a sense that's undermining someone's, but challenging to, as I do to my kids. I always, when they bring a proposal, I always ask them questions so that they ask these questions themselves and make sure that they've looked at the picture or matter from all the angles. So challenging in a good sense, but try to keep it structured and to the minimum so that they're not distracting from the operational activities. In terms of communicating with employees, in our bank, we've only established a town hall with employees at the end of January, and we wanted to have a communication and inspire the open communication of the employees with both boards actually. But when the quarantine started, obviously the meetings with the employees were no longer possible, and we switched to the so-called online town halls, where the CEO and the chair of the board, of the supervisory board, and potentially some other members of the supervisory board would record a video address to the employees. And we established some sort of a questionnaire for employees to check and monitor, if there is level of uncertainty or if there is an anxiety within the staff, which we can address in the next message. Is there anything you did, in addition to your usual communication, internal communication in the bank during the COVID times, to sort of give some certainty and level of comfort to the employees other than the management. Baiba, do you want to comment first, please?
The crisis actually made the communication with the bank more frequent. We didn't do any specific announcements to bank's employees. We considered that management board is running through crisis, and supervisory board is about to support them and encourage them on their daily duties. We were discussing with management board, with risk management people, with people working with non-performing loans more frequently. We established the remote work, risk reporting, financial monitoring. It was not like reporting to supervisory board. It was rather like discussion with those key people in the bank on their way through the crisis, and to encourage them to do the work and stay brave. Because this crisis is not just about falling revenue. The changes imposed on society and on people and business is dramatic, and that will be sustainable. So our task again is looking how to make good changes sustainable. For instance, digital transformation, how to invoke those practices of remote work, make it sustainable, and there is no way back anymore. So, and we also have to admit that solidarity in terms of remuneration. So we are solidar in our remuneration, doing our work. However, knowing that as well for management board and as well for us, the amount of work has increased significantly during the crisis.
Thank you, Baiba. Kateryna, I see your hands up. You wanted to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the communication issue is very important. During all times, but especially in the crisis times, it was the first what we asked from the banks, especially from the state-owned banks, to organize the proper communication with the clients, with the staff, with the shareholders, because it's very important to give all of them confidence and prevent the financial instability. For us, it was very important when all our counterparty, I mean all banks, support this communication strategy and communicate a lot with the clients, give them the understanding that all banking services exist. All banking services will be provided despite of the crisis. The communication with staff is very important because this crisis is quite different from all that we have been before, because this crisis brought a lot of dangers for health, for both, for staff and for clients. And the main tasks for all of for all of the bank's supervisory board was to, let me say, to explain equal clients and staff that we will do everything to prevent the sharing of the infection, and from the one hand, and from the other hand, to continue provide all of full banking services, including the cash distribution, credit servicing, payments, and so on, and give the people understanding that even online they will have access to the own accounts. It's very important. So that's why I'm just tell you thank you so much for this information support, because thanks of your communication, thanks of your information flowing, we was able to prevent financial instability in the financial sector.
Thank you, Kateryna. Sharon, do you want to add on the communication with the employee staff and potentially the clients? What you wanted to mention?
What I think is important, again, about the role of the supervisory board and the management board, we too relied principally on this management board to ensure that the appropriate communications were anticipated and in place, both for employees, for the management of the regional network, and for our clients, and to identify how best to take care of all of their needs. So it wasn't just the cash needs or the financial payment needs that we were very concerned about and continue to be very concerned about. As I said, we spent a substantial amount of time and continue to spend a substantial amount of time focusing on how clients' loan relationships and debt will be treated during this crisis and beyond. It is a complex issue and must consider many factors, but our two goals are to, well, actually three, are to ensure that our clients are treated in a way during this crisis that they will get through it, that they will be able to recover as quickly as possible as the economy recovers, and that this crisis will not cause substantial harm to their financial situation in their lives. The other thing that we have to balance those initiatives against is the financial condition of the bank. We have to make sure that we are protecting the bank's position financially, particularly in terms of making sure that the number and amount of non-performing loans is controlled, it's understood, when we're working to avoid as much default as we can through being very proactive and working through specific solutions for clients as they need it, as well as broad-based credit holiday initiatives. The third thing that we have been working on quite a bit, we want to do more, is finding ways to implement the government's initiatives for reduced rate products. And we support that initiative. It also has financial implications that are being developed and assessed over time. But those key things were central to our discussions and continue to be.
Thank you. On the client's aspect, and I suggested initially that we have an honest discussion. So, all of us, I'm sure, read the mass media and so was witnessing a media coverage of the call from the president to the CEO of our bank. And when we looked at that situation from the standpoint of the supervisory board, we felt like we need to urge the clients for more open communication at all the levels, but at the appropriate level of the supervisory board or the management board. And I think that when the three of us were discussing the communication with the clients and how to make sure that the bank can help them, it's important to keep sending the message, and not only at the level of the management board, but also by the supervisory board, that unless a client raises on time, his concerns or difficulties, the bank may not be, able to help on time and to suggest all the alternatives options to avoid this client, becoming non-performing client. So I think, from the internal communication with the employees, what is also very important is, sort of a seeking proactive communication from the client and keeping in more close contact than usual with them to make sure that, the bank can be helpful and can help. And there any examples in your banks where you've sort of encouraged the management, or you've communicated directly with the clients? Baiba, can you share the examples?
We were encouraging management board to have frequent and open communication with the clients on rescheduling the loans and other activities to keep the business running and support clients during the crisis. We did significant work on risk management in daily communication about changes in business environment. However, we as supervisory boards were not involved ourselves in the direct communication with the clients. What we did, we continuing our communication with potential investors. So that was done by supervisory boards, and again showing that we are on the track and that long-term strategy towards the attracting of private investor will be kept even through the crisis.
Sharon, you wanna, Kateryna, you want to make a comment, please?
Yes, thank you, Olyana. From my point of view, this particular case, which you described, does not fully connect with the lack of communication from the supervisory board or executive board with the clients. What I can tell you based on our practices, we are receiving a lot of calls and claims to our red line in the National Bank of Ukraine from the different type of clients. And at the beginning of crisis, at the beginning of quarantine, we received a huge amount of calls, and all clients said, look, the parliament voted and accepted the law which bring us the credit holidays, let me say, but the banks don't want to provide these holidays for us, don't want to provide the special condition for our credit lines, and so on. And we all of this claim we obliged to investigate and provide our recommendation to the bank and to the clients. And our investigation of the lot of case shows us that unfortunately there are a lot of clients which wanted to, let me say, abuse the situation. I'm so sorry, and requires from the bank some additional conditions when they did not, when the business condition doesn't require it. That's why this is a difficult situation, because in every crisis we can see the same situation. We see that the part of our clients, I mean private individuals, corporate business or SMEs, really meet their difficulties and need to help from the bank side, but we have some part of the clients which wanted to use this situation without any, let me say, necessaries to do it. And of course, we need to find the balance between the client's interest and bank interest. We cannot take any steps which bring difficulties or even break the financial condition of the bank, because we are responsible for depositor's side. And it's very difficult to do it, especially in this type of crisis. This is my first comment. And second, if I may, that's why to prevent this situation, to prevent when the clients claim the bank and require some special condition or something else, we ask the bank, please create, develop, first of all, use the proactive approach. Second, in advance, create and develop standard restructuring products for each type of clients, because you have everything what you need to do it. You can separate your clients by the group, based on the type of products, based on the status of financial condition, based on the other issues, and after that create and develop standard products and provide these products in advance. Don't wait when the crisis will finish. Don't wait when the quarantine will be cancelled. Immediately start to do it in advance. That can help you to avoid the claims, first of all, and help you to feel more sound, like as a financial condition of the institution, because you prevent the increasing of NPLs in future. So it was my short comments.
Sharon, you wanted to add something, because I totally agree with Kateryna, and that's why I think it's important that all these sort of client cases are analyzed from the standpoint of potential abuse of the situation. I think that was Kateryna was referring to, because obviously we understand that certain clients and industries are, impacted by the crisis more than others. In general, the lack of certainty for future, makes some other clients nervous as well. But there are obviously some situations which, as in every crisis, where some clients may be trying to abuse the situation. And obviously, I see the role of the supervisory board in helping the management to assess and to potentially maybe helping the management to negotiate with the clients or handle difficult discussion with difficult clients, where the management would spend so much time on these discussions, which again would distract them from operational activities. So to potentially, at the request obviously of the management, I don't see a problem for the supervisory board to sort of support the management in these discussions and assessments. Sharon, you have probably slightly different situation with the retail clients, but can you share your experience on the client's communication and proactive approaching them during the crisis?
Let me just add two things that come to mind in this general discussion about what the supervisory board did and what the challenges were, particularly with regard to the loan obligations and the debt of customers and our desire to provide assistance. We made it very clear to the management board that being very proactive on the front end to assist clients was essential, and this was based on our prior experience. Several of us have lived through financial crisis in other countries, and while there is the general reaction of banks to freeze everything, we cautioned our bank from taking that action. We wanted to be methodical, to keep things going, and to make sure that we were being smart, both, again, for the short term and the long run. We helped our management board by being very clear in terms of what we felt our objectives were and what we would support them in accomplishing, because there is a trade-off, there's a balance, and because of the uncertainty, it's, they're doing their best effort to project the financial impact of different scenarios on the current and long-term financial condition of the bank. What we did, specifically though, is we created or asked the management board to provide us what we thought were essential statistics on a weekly basis, because we were meeting with the bank management both on a weekly basis for updates on COVID-19 issues, as well as specific set time, as well, again, through the risk committee, as well as other interim discussions as needed. So we wanted to know how many clients were going to benefit from the various credit holiday scenarios that the bank was implementing. We wanted to be very sure that every client got the appropriate adjustments as needed in the near term, and that the bank was considering longer term processes and parameters as well. We wanted, when we got, how many complaints are we getting? What is the nature of the complaint? How many people have applied? How many people have successfully gotten restructured? How many clients got the rate reduction? How many clients were rejected, and why were they rejected? And we wanted to track very specifically the success of the initiatives and the impact of the initiatives so that we could, as necessary, help the bank adjust our programs. The other thing that is a concern, again, this is not just a concern in Ukraine, is that the expertise of a staff needed to grow a bank and lend money and reach out to clients is a very different skill set than someone that knows how to understand and restructure problem debt. And so our concern was also, and part of our dialogue was, does our staff that's helping clients have the proper tools in place, and do they know how to deal with customers in an effective way? So we were, looking at all of the mechanisms and all of the essential pieces of making sure that what we were talking about at a conceptual level, the bank was able to implement on the ground. So it's a broader discussion than just theory. It's actually making sure that what we talk about on Thursday at 4 a.m. is implemented and on an ongoing basis, and we're able to measure the impact of our decisions.
Thank you, ladies. In terms of other expectations of the National Bank of Ukraine, Kateryna, is there anything the boards can help during this time, or during the remaining reminder of the crisis, or afterwards during the recovery? Because obviously the communication with the clients, the proactive communication, standardized products, as you mentioned, communication with the staff to make sure they are, feeling less uncertainty, let's put it this way. These are all important, but is there anything else? The discussion, yes, if you have any suggestions, and, that would be very useful.
Thank you. First of all, when we are talking about our expectation, I need to note that we still expect from the supervisory board that they will build the fully working corporate governance system in the bank, because even the brilliance supervisory board is not equal the brilliance corporate governance system. So we still wait for us, it's very important, for us, for the regulators, it's very important that all banks, especially state-owned banks, will have the common vision, common values, common understanding, good relationship between supervisory board and shareholders, supervisory board and executive board, will have the common ideology, let me say. And based on these intangible things, the supervisory board will build the internal procedure, started from transparent decision-making process, ending the transparent conflict solution or conflict resolution process, potential conflict resolution. It's very, very important in each level of governance. But of course, during or in regards of this crisis, what we are thinking about and what we expect from supervisory board and of course from the executive board also, everybody or all of us need to understand how we will run business after the crisis. Because this crisis influences on the general economy condition, and this impact is very huge. And we see that a lot of very important things in the economy prospect of view will be changed dramatically. Started from the demand, because demand is falling and has negative impact on other economy areas. And of course, we understand that the financial condition of the clients is becoming worse. That's why we need to understand how we rebuild our proposition for the clients, including credit products, considering with their financial condition, because we need to start to credit. Banks cannot provide just fee services. Yeah, that's why we need to adopt our products and our tactics to the new reality, to be able to continue serve the clients from the one hand, and from the other to keep the financial condition of the bank in the proper level. The second point we see, and you mentioned above about the online services, about the digitalization. This crisis accelerated all these trends. Yeah, we see that all of us jump to the online, not even in the services process, but of course in communication process, in management process, and so on. This is a big challenge because it requires the high quality of IT, requires reconsidering a lot of procedures, internal procedures, started from the communication one and ended of the risk assessments and so on. And all of these challenges should be managed by supervisory board. So it's our expectation. And today we are talking with the bank about the future plans, what we will do after the crisis, which clients, which products, which channel will be used, which maybe new services will be provided. And we need to start to communicate right now, not in September or end of the year when the quarantine will finish. We need to start to communicate with our clients and with our staff today, because all these challenges will change a lot of our approach dramatically, and will have a huge impact on the all parties. In this process. So this is our expectation.
Thank you, Kateryna. And I especially like your comments about having exemplar members of the supervisory board does not guarantee the good corporate governance. And I totally agree with you. And I must admit that it has been obviously challenging that the reload of the management coincided in time with the sort of a crisis. However, we are, moving steadily but surely in building up the, board and down the communication and the governance framework. At the same time, it has been quite challenging, I must admit, in terms of enhancing the communication with the shareholder. And so we've been discussing it on a number of occasions with my colleagues, Sharon and Baiba. In our bank experience, we've been trying to sort of manage the the legislative deadlines, but also the common sense deadlines. We've been in the process of finalizing the strategy. Yes, we postponed the final decision of the supervisory board for a month to take into effect potential implications of the crisis, but we've approved the strategy. It's obviously a moving target, and we expect it to be a live document. But unfortunately, the discussion with the shareholder has not started yet. And I sort of applaud to whoever included in the IMF standby agreement. They need to enhance the capacity of the shareholder function at the level of the shareholder, because I'm hoping this dialogue can move from the formal exchange of letters, mostly one-sided, to the discussion and regular communication between the shareholder and the boards, because we are definitely facing certain difficulty sort of activating it, let's put it this way.
We understand the situation is not easy. First of all, because the recent changes of the government bring changes and changed the relationship between supervisory board and the shareholders. Secondly, because due to the COVID, we see that prioritization of the task was changed, and a lot of efforts of the government, especially of the Ministry of Finance, was sent to the fighting against the COVID, and it's again plus final agreement with IMF took a lot of efforts, and so it's let me say, we can understand it and should understand it, but you absolutely are right that we need to improve the relationship between the supervisory board and shareholders, and bring this conversation or discussion to the regular basis. And what can we do in this regard? We can, let me say, we can propose to be like the common platform, for banks, supervisory boards of the banks from the one hand, and shareholders, I mean Ministry of Finance from the other hands, because we are regulator, and our interest is to ensure that the state-owned banks are developing according to the strategy, according to the main goals, still healthy, with the sound financial conditions. That's why we will try to, let me say, to organize a working platform for all of us, and trying to make this platform on the regular basis. Okay.
Yeah, that's a very good idea, because I also wanted, and unless ladies you have anything to sort of add, jump in, but there is a strange perception of independence of the supervisory board, which I'm hearing recently, that the independent supervisory boards are the boards who do not want to listen to anyone. And as far as I understand the corporate governance, the boards are about listening, actually, but in order for the supervisory board to listen, somebody needs to speak to the supervisory board. So, we are here to balance the interests of all the stakeholders, but, we need to, and we're ready to listen, yes, Baiba, but we just need these parties to speak up at, appropriate corporate governance level of communication. Baiba, you wanted to add something?
Yes, we treat the continuous communication with shareholder during crisis very seriously as supervisory board, and trying to keep it open all the time. So, and that again, we kept it from the long-term perspective. So understanding the government's short-term needs to borrow money and that's quite understandable process. However, we all the time were reminding the shareholder and keeping discussion with the management board as well, so that the crisis will end. So what we're gonna do with this portfolio? Please be very careful when we are doing these things. So it's it was very, very essential, and we really took it very seriously.
Thank you. Sharon, unless you want to comment on this one, I'll move to my final question.
We at Privat Bank see our relationship with the shareholder as the essential relationship. It has always been our view that they are key. And I do think, Olyana, you raise a good point. In corporate governance, there is a misperception that the independent boards, and that's international members as well as Ukrainian members, because as you know, our board is majority Ukrainian experts, and they're essential to what we do. But what I was going to say is that the misunderstanding is that there's no influence, that we need to be isolated from any influence of any outside parties. And that is incorrect. What the corporate governance is designed to guard against is inappropriate influence by outsiders, not no influence by outsiders. So we, in fact, as you said, must consider the interest of the government, the interest of the shareholder, the interest of all of the regulator, central bank, our clients, the economy, our objectives. All of these things must be considered on an ongoing basis. So, but it's not just in Ukraine. The relationship between the banks and the regulators and the shareholders across the globe is often a challenge, which is why there are now procedures and standard protocols being developed to help provide some bright lines on how those things can be better accomplished, how the communication can be better accomplished. And in fact, we're working with the Minister of Finance and others on this process right now. I would have to say, though, that two things that I'm always kind of pleased when I talk with the Ministry of Finance and find out that I'm not their biggest concern. I'm like, oh, okay. They've got bigger problems than Privat Bank. That's good news. That means they must have a comfort level that, you know, at least today we're not the emergency. So that always makes me come away with some comfort. The other thing is, because they do have many, many serious challenges as the Ministry of Finance in this always, but particularly in this crisis. The other thing that I would like to say is that, and I think it's important, particularly in the current dialogues that are ongoing, is that while the communication can always be better, I mean, we could communicate better with our bank. We could communicate better with fill in the blank. When you're working, you know, 12, 15 hours a day, communication is a big challenge. That said, I have always felt the support of our shareholder in this crisis and since we took this job. They have been key policy supporters of our bank on essential issues, and I think the reform in general. And so, again, we can always communicate better, more frequently, but the reality is that I do feel that the staff that we work with and the executives we work with are quite engaged and quite supportive of what we have to accomplish.
Thank you. Ladies, we are essentially finalizing the discussion. And if I may ask you a challenging question, in a sense, challenging, how do you understand diversity in the boards or on this panel? How do you like the diversity?
May I start? Yeah, because it's a very popular question. For me, diversity, first of all, is thinking diversity, diversity, experience diversity, ideas diversity. This is, I think, more important for any boards, for any panel discussion, because it's make all our decision-making process, all our choice more interesting and more effective, more efficient.
Thank you, Katya. Baiba, Sharon?
Well, I think there's all kinds of diversity, but there is, in fact, demographic diversity. And this is just a true story. And this could be anywhere in the world, especially the country where I come from, but it happened in Ukraine. Our board stays at the same hotel. A lot of the international players do, just because of the services and people speak English and it's appropriately located. And we were having a late night meeting, as we often do. And what's interesting is our board is diverse in age, diverse in ethnicity, diverse in education. What we do hold as common denominators, and they're just critical, is common values, to Ms. Rozhkova's point. We do hold very deeply and personally a common set of core values and commitment to Ukraine and commitment to how, what is right and what is wrong. But beyond that, and we do all have, the other thing in common is that we all have specific experience in the financial sector. We don't have any outliers in that regard. Everyone has worked in a financial institution most of their career, if not all of their career, in some way or another. And this experience is essential to the work that we do. And it is work that is essential to running organizations that are as large and complex and essential to this country as banks are. That said, again, we're pleased that we have age differences, gender differences, ethnicity differences, all those things, and personality differences, but it's great. We did observe in the same evening that there was another group of gentlemen across the lobby from us, and they all stood up. They were all exactly the same age, the same height, the same suit, the same hair color, the same everything. That doesn't mean they cannot be a very effective board. Probably they are. But you have to wonder about the opportunities for different ideas, different perspectives, different experiences to be appropriately brought to bear when there is too much similarity in the profiles of people on any particular board or in any organization. It's any organization in the world. It's schools, it's hospitals, it's fill in the blank. So I think diversity is important, and it needs to be all kinds of diversity.
Baiba, before I conclude, did you want to add on the diversity, please?
Yes, I agree to have all kinds of diversity on the boards. It adds value to the business and to the more weighted decisions the board makes. And this is a major power of the supervisory board to have a very different knowledge and experiences brought together from different countries, from different economies, and all these discussions go through the Ukrainian perspective. So this is very, very important, and I see sometimes there's a challenge that supervisory board is treated like here is a decision, so you have to take it. And there is no this discussion. So the discussion is essential. And this is what supervisory board is about. And this is very big challenge for this remote crisis time. That's the way of discussing and the way we as a supervisory board were doing our decisions. It's has to be completely changed. So the discussions has to be moderated differently. The people have to admit to all the remote channels and change the way the work is done.
Thank you, Baiba, and everyone for mentioning what you said. I think that diversity should not only exist, it should work. And it's more about inclusivity for me than, and as you said, Baiba, allowing all different opinions to be heard and expressed. And that's why I think that the role of the chairman or chairperson of the board during crisis, considering the digital way we are communicating, is even more sort of a challenging, because you need to make sure that whatever diversity you have in terms of gender, age, nationality, professional background, that it actually allows you to have this diversity of opinions, which Kateryna mentioned in the beginning. Yes, Sharon, please.
Okay, thank you. This is an important point, particularly as we talk about composition of boards in Ukraine. There is I had heard that on some boards in state-owned banks and state-owned enterprises, that there was this real or apparent conflict between the international members and the Ukrainian members. And when our new board launched a year ago, I was very specific and had a conversation with all of our members, but in particular our Ukrainian colleagues and the representative members of the board, that we would never consider a decision or an opinion that they had that was different from ours as being because they were influenced by someone else, that we would honor their decision and their opinions as being their own and treat it as part of the process. And I think it's very important for people to be treated in this environment as equal partners at the table, and to have, and that's part of what we do as chairman, is allow the appropriate amount of discussion, and actually not allow it, is kind of require it, is put people, hold them accountable. What do you think? So we never have any substantive discussion where we don't basically have each person, and I invite each person to offer their opinion. They can say, I agree with so-and-so, they don't have to repeat it, but it's essential that the dialogue and the way we work brings all of these diverse ideas to the table. We do not want a situation where the people that are the loudest and the most intense and passionate always win the argument, just because that's a style. So again, it's a process of communication, and because of the diversity that exists, it is something that we have to work at and be very deliberate about.
Thank you. I don't know if you've noticed a lot of diversity of minds in this panel. Sounded to me more complementary than different. But again, it was very nice, discussing and sharing the examples and opinions. Kateryna, thank you for allocating your time and giving us the guidance and suggesting to some useful suggestions. We'll keep in touch and continue to work for the benefit of our country, of my country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for invitation, first of all, and keep in touch really, and let me say, improving our communication between all of us and make, based on this, improve the process of our banks and our economy. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Nice evening, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.